Independent Scientologists. Discover a new perspective to your bridge by visiting ao-gp.org. Get in session with remote auditing using the Theta meter. Are you curious about where you stand? Head on over to ao-gp.org now and take our free personality test. Join the growing group of independent Scientologists today.
Hi, everyone. This is Jonathan Burke, Quentin Stroud with AOGP Scientology Outside of the Church podcast. New season, season 7, episode 1. This one is entitled Theta-MEST, Matter, Energy, Space, and Time Theory. So let's get the ball rolling here. With any luck tomorrow, we'll start doing video podcasts in tandem with the audio, so you can either listen and or watch us live on Facebook and YouTube, and probably several other outlets as we ramp up to this next week. Twitter, a lot of other places too. So get ready for a wild ride as we allow you with our live podcasts to comment as we're doing the podcast. If you have questions, we can answer those questions, give you references, we can share screen and everything. So it'll be very interactive, be really cool. We tested it out this morning. It was a lot of fun. So back to Theta-MEST theory. This is from the Universe Processes Congress. First question is, what is Theta and Mest? Quentin, would you want to answer that
absolutely.
question?
Absolutely. So for those of you who have been following us for quite some time, please go back and watch some of the other podcasts as well on YouTube. But what you'll hear is this, that Theta is you, right? It's you as a spiritual being. It's the Theta, we call it the Theta universe. It is all that is spiritual. It is all that is operating as a being in existence, across existence, not finite in time, not finite in location, not finite in space, not finite in any way. It is infinite beingness. It is you being you. That is Theta. And then we have the opposite of that, right? We have the opposite of that, which is Mest, M-E-S-T, matter, energy, space, and time. These are the component parts of the physical universe, the stuff that you touch, the stuff that you feel, the computer that I'm on right now, the chair I'm sitting in. It consists of matter and energy in a certain space at a certain time. That is Mest. And today, what we're going to really dive into is how Theta and Mest interact with each other, how Theta and Mest collide, if you will, and what happens when this happens in a good way and what happens when it happens in a bad way. So talk to me about this. Like, if I'm a spiritual being, or that I am a spiritual being, operating a physical body, that's a good thing, right? Ain't that supposed to work?
Well, that's why auditing works, is because it's a two-terminal universe. And when I say universe, the physical universe is a two-terminal universe. A prime example of that is, well, you can go as far back as Nikola Tesla and everything like that, where he realized that you could use different terminals for things in order to conduct electricity and master it. And it's an interesting to point that they don't know why electricity does what it does. They just know that it does in a two-terminal universe.
Yep.
And in auditing, what we do is we have a little electrical current that goes through the electrodes on a theta meter or an E meter, and the resistance to that electrical current is how we know that there is the presence or lack thereof of mental mass and energy, which is matter, energy, space, and time. And that's being created by the Thetan, not the body. That's something different, and we can get into that later on if you want to. But that's the deal. That's where this all comes from, is you are interacting in the physical universe as a Thetan with a Mest body. That's important to point out as well, because
Exactly.
the two terminal universe thing is, well, there's a couple of two terminal things going on here. Actually, a lot, but more on that later.
Right. Yeah, this is really interesting because when you understand yourself as separate and distinct outside of time, outside of space, outside of matter, that you're not in your body unless you are, that the best condition that one can be in is kind of around his own body or her own body, right? You can be in close proximity to your body, operating it totally separate and exterior to it.
Right.
It's kind of not that good if one is stuck in their meat, right? If one is trapped in your own meat body. And so again, when we talk about, if you go back and watch the podcast about exteriorization, that one of the byproducts, if you will, of auditing is that a person might go exterior and they might be not trapped by their own meat body, right? Anyway, so when theta, you, beingness, collides with Mest, right? This gives Mest now activity. It gives Mest motion. It gives Mest something to do, something to work with. It gives Mest a way of existing, of having some kind of significance, right? Because if you think about it, if you just have a lump of meat, if you just have a piece of steak that sit there, that steak is not going to get up and move. That steak is not going to produce no milk. That steak is just going to be steak until life is imbued into it, right? Until some kind of consciousness, some kind of awareness unit is making it function.
Well, and
so, I thought you were going to say something.
And you have to imbue Mest with theta, and that's where this is the entry point of the whole Theta-MEST theory, is you have to put theta into matter, energy, space, and time to make it alive. And this goes back to where we were talking about granting of beingness in the last podcast.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
if you don't like something, it's not going to do well. You don't like a plant, that plant is theta. There's theta there. It would not be alive if it wasn't for theta. Now there are different classes or castes of theta, if you will, that exist. And they're all over the place in this universe, LRH says. And I find this to be very, very true. But you can imbue anything with theta. And it's interesting to note that when a human body dies, it loses somewhere in the neighborhood of an ounce to an ounce and a half of weight when the thetan drops the body. This is proven. They don't have an answer for it outside of Scientology, independent Scientology, but it is true that this happens. So you're putting your finger into the body as a puppet and moving it around and everything on the playfield of the matter, energy, space, and time universe in order to get it to animate. And without it, it's ice cold. There's nothing there.
Well, and LRH talks about in the lecture on the Universe Processes Congress, LRH talks about this particular process that you can do where you put significance into things, and you just like kind of look around the room, look around your life, look around the community or the wherever you're walking or whatever, and just put significance into it. No particular type of significance, just put significances into things and see how that changes your viewpoint on the matter, right? We talked about viewpoints and all that stuff and the factors, how it changes your viewpoint on the matter. Because if you think about it, per LRH, we actually tend to exist in a reverse flow. We tend to exist in a world where stuff is telling us what it is. And the Mest is telling the being, Mest is telling theta what it is. This computer is telling me it's a computer, and it bees that, right? And it's a firmness in it. It's a solidity in it. It's a fixed idea that this is a computer, right? But if you really think about it, if you do this process and you put significance into things, you put you put significance into things, what you'll find is that you're actually telling the Mest that it's a computer.
Mm-hmm.
You're telling the Mest that this is a wall.
Mm-hmm.
And that becomes then the right way, if you will, the right flow, the proper flow of you as the being telling the physical universe what it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Period.
Mm-hmm.
How about that?
Well, it's interesting to note that, you know, we've mentioned this in many podcasts, that when somebody or something is creating Mest, they're putting it in there to get it to be what it needs to be, whether it's the condo that you live in or the house that I live in or whatever is surrounding us, that there was some sort of creation, there was some sort of attention put at all the plants that I have here in the office around me. The plants are playing their part, but there was also theta put into them to help them grow, to give them a place where they could grow, to the walls around us and everything. There's a create that's put there, and that create is constant, whether the people know it or not. There is a little bit of their theta that is being put into that thing, and that allowing it to have life and be extant. It's sort of a landlords know that a house that they own or an apartment that they own doesn't stick around very long unless there are people living in it. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they have to take care of it, but it's just the fact that there's theta in and around it that helps keep it standing. And that's an important point to make out, is that, you know, whether we're aware of it or not, we do it on a low level, but on a high level is what we're talking about, is what are you putting into things? Are you at cause over it, or are you at effect over it? And are you going into agreement with it not working, or going into agreement with it not being right, correct, aesthetic, that sort of a thing? How do you feel in a house where the walls are a terrible color? You don't feel real good.
Oh God.
You know,
I live in the Philippines.
right. You know, and
they love pastels here.
Right. So it's one of those things where once you start putting theta into something and putting a create on it, is to the degree that, well, it increases your tone level as well as the matter, energy, space, and time around you, and that has to be done. Otherwise, you know, if nobody lived in New York City, the plants would take over before too long.
Yeah.
I mean, and they just start breaking everything down.
There's plenty of movies that show that.
Yeah. And it's an important point that on a low level, the plants will do it. You don't even have to have a thetan doing it. Nature will find a way, type of a thing. But above that is the way that we do it. We put a lot more order into things, whereas plants, they tend to just break things down to make life conducive for them, just like we do. It's just a different order of magnitude.
A blade of grass popping up through the sidewalk.
Yeah,
right? It'll move that sidewalk so it can live.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you see that all over town in South Africa. You see these trees that have just popped up the sidewalk, and the sidewalk isn't even usable anymore. These big, huge roots, type of a thing. And you know, when you get into like Florida, for example, they have to stay on top of that constantly, because the plants are constantly trying to take over the city, because of the amount of water that they have, the amount of energy that they're given by the sunlight and the water. As an example, we're sunlight and water, just on a greater scale.
That's true. So if Mest is doing what Mest do, and as a Thetan, I get to come in and I get to organize that Mest. I think LRA calls it a conquest of Mest, right? That we conquer Mest. We have a conquest of Mest, and we organize it, we reorganize it, we break it down, we build it up, we shift it around or whatever to make it become what we need it to become for whatever reason. So then it says Theta then is the solver, and Mest, this is part of Theta-MEST theory. Theta is the solver, and then Mest is the poser of problems. Right? Whatever the barriers are, whatever the issues are. Oh, I gotta use a hammer to make a sword. Boom, 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 blacksmith. Or I gotta, move big bodies of water around to create dams and all this stuff, whatever. So Mest is the poser of problems, and Theta, you are the solver of problems, right? And so as the solver of problems, you are the one who gets ideas. You're the one who gets ideas. You are the manufacturer of ideas. And these ideas, then you utilize these ideas as a metric for controlling your mist, to controlling the physical environment around you, right? And you just mentioned about the color, painting the color of the walls to more aesthetically pleasing color, or hanging a piece of art, or doing something that's going to bring that space to your vibration, bring that space to the level in which you choose to operate in. And conversely, it's the other way around, right? If you're functioning on a low level, if you're just barely surviving, if you're just kind of trying to make ends meet and trying to push things through, or whatever case may be, then your mest might reflect that as well, right? It's going to reflect that level, or that quality, or that beingness.
Well, and it comes back to, considerations are senior to the physical universe from the axioms, is that you have to, what is beautiful to you, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and it's also an axiom that if it's the way that you think that it is, that's survival, that's pro survival. Or you move into a place and you're like, man, this isn't going to work, I got to get out of here, because it isn't pro survival for you, whether it's aesthetics, or whether it's functionality, or it's location, or safety, or all of these things, or temperature. I mean, we live by the ocean, and it's cold in the winter. It's much colder by the ocean in the winter than it is inland by a mile or 2 miles. So you have to take these things into consideration too, that it isn't just aesthetics, is that your consideration makes Mest the way that it is. It isn't Mest makes itself the way that it is, and you have to change your consideration. You're senior to that.
Right. That's amazing. Because it could happen. It could happen that you get into the Mest valence, right? You start to identify as a body. Right? You get into agreement with it. You start to identify as a body. We're just a lump of mud, or whatever. What is it? The mud theory?
Man from mud.
Man from mud theory. Yeah. This idea that you're just mud that has somehow gained some awareness or sentience, or whatever case may be. And that's actually not the case, right? That you are Theta. You are a spiritual being. You are a Thetan, and you are animating these cells and molecules and proteins and muscles and enzymes and tissues, and making them all function. Now, the more we agree with the idea of physicality, the more we agree with the Mest idea that you are a piece of meat or piece of mud, the more you come into agreement with that, the more problems, get this, the more problems you actually have to conquer, the more problems you have to deal with, because you then become the problem. You're identifying with the problem. You're causing your own problems. You're creating your own game in the body, in your life, with the car, with the tires. Oh my God, I got to get the tires replaced. I don't know how. I just changed them 4 months ago. Stuff starts happening, right?
Yep. Yeah. Well, and you see people that are sick. They're in agreement with it's, oh my this and oh my that, and the body is not working. This and this, and you immediately get the impression they are their body. Whereas you get somebody who's healthy, and they're in their 60s or 70s, and they're not having any body problems. You go, wow, this is a marked difference between these two individuals who are roughly the same age. What is that difference? Well, one thinks they're a body, and the other one doesn't. Because that what you put your attention on is what you get. And that's important about the Theta-MEST theory, is if you're putting your attention on something, why are you putting your attention on it? Are you senior or junior to that thing? And a solution will present itself if you don't go into agreement with the complexities of the MEST universe. It's just,
and that goes back to what we said the other day about sweeping attention. Having sweeping attention, whereas like don't be so fixated on the thing, whether it be money. I was talking to a client actually earlier today. Wow. I was talking to a client earlier today, and she could not get to the solution that she wanted because she was so fixated on the money.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, you're focusing too much on the money. There's something so much bigger than that. There's an experience of life beyond just that.
Right.
And so I want you to have this greater experience of life and love and experiences and the whole bit, but you can't even do that because you're so focused about the money. Your whole marriage is falling apart, but you worried about, the money, but how we can't do this, we can't do that, he didn't take me out.
Mm-hmm.
He don't even take me nowhere no more, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, could you do it at home? Could you have a wonderful romantic experience at home?
Mm-hmm.
Could you go out in the backyard and have a little picnic or something like that? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like, could you walk to a free park and you fixed on the money?
That's an important point too, and when I say it's an important point, is what are your importances in MEST?
Yeah.
What's important? Where it's done or how it's done and by whom?
Mm-hmm.
That's really what's important, because if your importances are MEST, well, then your importances are going to be much, much different in what you're having as the focal point of it. Is it who you're with or where you are? It was at an expensive restaurant, or was it with a person I love? Now,
That's right.
there's something to be said for, a balance of those things, but it should be about it. And like Ellery says in auditing, all we're concerned with is terminals. That's the important thing, because that's where this two terminal interchange occurs. And this is where people get hung up on things, is that they think they're MEST. That's why auditing works. Once you go clear, you don't think you're MEST. You're not your body. You run a body, and then you're free of the physical universe. That's why clear is so important, is to get the person to realize they are not their body, because at clear, you've gotten the person to a point to where they realize they are not their body. They are not in agreement with the physical universe, and they don't get pushed around by it so much. So it's more important who you're with and who you're interchanging with than it is where you're interchanging at, if that makes sense.
That's right. Well, I love how you said, am I there at this expensive restaurant, or am I there with the person I love? What is the focal point of my awareness, of my attention, of my viewpoint? Like, I'm there with the person I love. Oh, this is a nice place. Yeah, but I couldn't, you were gazing into each other's eyes the entire time. It's like the whole world, melted away, and it's us, doing our thing or whatever. That's the kind of experience you want in love, right? That's the kind of experience you want with this. You want to be so enamored, so interested in someone. We talked about being interested versus being interesting. So interested in your partner, both directions, right? Both terminals.
Yep.
That the rest of the physical world really is just a byproduct of this love, of what we've created together, what we're building together, with the empire that we're creating, the life that we're creating. That's how it is. It's interesting because LRH says here in the lecture, he said the Theta-MEST theory consisted of this: that theta could get itself into a series of postulates or confusions, here which would solidify, and that is the material universe. That actually is what created it. Life itself created by a series of agreements. So this thing has been created. This physical universe, this condo that I'm sitting in right now, was created by a series of agreements. Okay. From the architect to the builders, to the contractors, to the construction workers, to the bricks and whatever else is going on. It was a series of agreements that all pulled together and created this space, right? This thing that I'm operating
Mutual
in.
creation.
But yeah, but now it's interesting. He said, but here's the whole anatomy as it comes out in terms of agreement. Actually, it comes out in terms of imagination. This is good. Theta-MEST theory. Right? that life creates mest, right? Life creates this thing, right? With ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then he says that it really is, it comes out in terms of imagination. An individual can postulate reality. He can say it's real and it's real. Nobody has to agree with him. He doesn't even have to agree with himself. But when two have agreed, right? And by the way, it talks about the book of Matthew, where it says in the book of Matthew, when two people agree why something comes true. Well, that's what we mean by the physical universe truth. When two or more are gathered, when two or more agree, there
Mm-hmm.
it is, right? Now, you can create your universe on your own, just out of pure imagination, pure postulate, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can create a universe of your own. You can create a life of your own. But when two or three are gathered, where two or more agree, when people can come into agreement with that, that's where it gets real fun. Because
Mm-hmm.
now you get to play around with your creations, with the rest of the world, with other people, with your family, with your friends, or whatever your universes. You get to play around with it.
Right.
That's when it becomes fun.
Yeah, when you get that interaction, it's one of those things where if you think of a moment in your life where something was really magical, well, the magical part, the feeling that you have about that is your created perception, your feeling, your emotion of it. It wasn't that it was magical per se. It was magical for you. And then when you do that with other people and you have this agreement of magical, 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 then it's a whole new level of magical because you have this agreement, you have this universe of magical. And you know, you've heard that expression, you can never go home. When you go back to some place where you used to live that you were fond about or whatever,
Oh yeah,
and you look at it and you go,
this ain't home anymore.
yeah, it's like that in Grosse Point Blank with John Cusack. He goes back to his old home and now it's a convenience store, a house converted into a convenience store. You
Yep.
know, it's just the magic just isn't there anymore. Well, you know, for one, it's not the same thing. But the thing is it's the same thing when there's agreement there, when mom and dad, and brother and sister, and your dogs and all of that stuff. And it's never quite the same again because you can't get that same agreement in the physical universe because
Yeah.
this is a really important point I want to make. This just dawned on me. You've heard that, you know, two ships passing in the night type of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And we're talking about, you know, magic and how you feel about things. What you're looking at is the entire physical universe, like we've talked about before, is a big clockwork.
Mm-hmm.
And certain things are in certain places. And if you hadn't met so-and-so at a certain time on a certain platform like Facebook, you hadn't run into them at the grocery store and they just happened to go there because they ran out of milk, and you met the love of your life and they're your soulmate and all of this stuff, it's a clockwork. Why is it a clockwork? It's a clockwork because to a certain degree, it's chaos. It's chaotic until you walk in and you say, okay, and I think this will paint the picture for people how Theta changes Mest. When you start putting control in, you meet somebody that is your item and you're like, wow, I love this gal or girl. Okay. Now you're putting control into it. It's no longer chaos. And hey, you want to go out tonight, and you start putting order in, and then you start living together, and then you get married and you start buying a house and you put all this create there. You're putting that create in the physical universe. Otherwise, the physical universe is just kind of knocking you around and you're down a couple levels lower and you're at the effect of it. It's when you put that create there and you go, wow, this is really magical, that it is magical, or it is horrible, or it's a nightmare, or it's a train wreck, that type of a thing, because you decide that it's that way. That's all there is to it. It's that consideration that it's magical, or that it's a train wreck, or it's awful. That is Mest. Remember we were talking about symbols and everything, and you're looking at the physical universe, and all of these symbols remind you of magical or awful.
Right.
Because you considered it to be.
Exactly. It's interesting because when we talked about agreement as well, and like all these people coming together to agree it, when I teach on magic and the whole bit, I teach that there's something called a glamour. And a glamour literally says this: it's to create an illusion so real
Mhm.
as to convince all onlookers of
Mhm.
its reality, of it being real, to create an illusion so real. It's called a glamour. And so when you can create an illusion so real that it convinces all onlookers that it is, this is where you see, if you see movies and you'll see a witch might change her form or transfiguration or whatever, it's a glamour. Right?
Mhm.
It's just an illusion so real that, oh wow, that's so beautiful. But really it's an old crone or something like that, right?
Mhm.
It's like it's a glamour. But what's interesting about this too is this. LRH says it this way. He said that you get people to kind of come into this agreement, right? So a fellow can imagine a reality. After he's imagined one, if a lot of people agreed with it and so forth, it can bring about a fixed reality. If an awful lot of people have agreed with it, then he feels it will be a big liability to change it. Hear me.
Mhm.
This is big.
Mhm.
If you've created a reality, right? And if you've come up with this reality, it could be a diagnosis, it could be a gimp leg, it could be a whatever, right? If you've created this reality for yourself, and people have come into agreement with it. Oh, poor Jimmy, he's always had that little gimp leg, or poor, Mary, she's always, she's had this diagnosis or something that's going on with her. And they give you all this agreement and all this sympathy and all this stuff,
Mhm.
it says that Thetan actually feels there would be a big liability to change it. Because
Mhm.
so many people see it, so many people know about it, so many people agree with it, so many people have sent you so much sympathy about your diagnosis, and it's so sad, and you actually feel it would be a liability to change
Mhm.
it.
Mhm.
And so we have an unwillingness to change certain things, right? We have this unwillingness because I can't change that now.
Mhm.
They've given me so much sympathy around it. What? Oh no, I'm better now.
Yeah, well,
I'm good.
it's that successful action of being interesting in a negative light. I can't change that
Mm,
successful action of this because then I won't get attention. If I don't have this problem, I don't have
yeah,
anything. I
yeah.
mean, that's what
And
reality TV is.
oh my gosh, and that's what the whole medical. That's what at least the Western medicine medical thing is. That
Mhm.
you got so much agreed upon reality that this thing cannot be cured. It's incurable or whatever, whatever. Oh, but if you take this pill, you'll be fine. Like it's this agreed upon reality, and with this agreed upon reality, if they just oh no, it's better, but we don't have to deal with that anymore. It's cured, right?
Mhm.
Where's the money?
Right.
Where's the industry?
Right.
Where's the flow from this? No, we could cure this, but no, let's just keep it in there
Yeah, there's no cure. There's
because
no
people
money
would
in the
lose their
cure.
jobs.
Yeah.
Yeah, there'll be a liability if we cured it. People would
Mhm.
lose their jobs, and people
Mhm.
wouldn't be able to support their families. And how the kids gonna eat and get it? It's so funny.
Yeah. Right. And if you had a person that built houses and they did that, they wouldn't be building houses very long.
Right.
you know,
Right.
that guy, he doesn't build very good houses. So
Yeah.
why is it any different there that people have bought into this consideration?
Yeah.
If you can't cure me, well, it's all a mystery. We don't know everything about the human body yet.
Oh
Horseshit.
God.
Horseshit. You
Right.
just give them drugs to cover it up and then make them feel like that there's something there we don't quite yet understand. It's beyond our medical knowledge. And then LRH comes
Yeah.
along and the AMA wants to shut him down because Dianetics works too well.
See.
Yeah,
And your eyesight gets corrected, or your rheumatoid arthritis gets sorted out, or whatever, and it's like, wait, that was it. I
well,
just had to go in and deal with one engram.
right. All sickness is PTSness. So, that's somebody is there being interesting instead of interested. And that's the whole idea. And this is what later on developed into that. Theta-MEST theory developed into that is interested or interesting. So if you're interested in Mest and you imbue it with theta, you're at cause. If Mest is interesting to you, you tend to go into agreement with it. And
Yeah.
and this also shows up when, they say that it's not the attainment of it, it's the journey to it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
Yeah.
really important, because what's at the end of it? Mest, if you're in the physical universe. What's
Right.
the attainment is all of the problem
Theta
solving and
qualities.
theta qualities and everything. That's where the quote unquote magic happens, is all of the things that we had to go through to get to this. And then you get it, and you get your Maserati in the driveway, and you go, not quite how I imagined it. It's a little thin.
Right.
And that's the funny thing about Mest. He says when you get up onto the OT levels, and this is so true, you start to look at the physical universe, and it starts to seem like a movie set where there's only a facade, and you look behind it and it's a bunch of 2x4s propping up a single wall type of a thing. It's just not nearly as real.
Right.
Once you have that understanding of it, you don't go the adverse effect. I was just in the kitchen earlier cussing out a container on how slow it was pouring out of the container, because it's this time thing, and how slow the physical universe is on getting things done. And in the theta universe, it's instantaneous, and you just know. So you have to drop down, and you have to wait for it to pour out, and you have to scrape it out of the can and make sure you got everything out. Then you go rinse the can out so the bugs don't get it in the trash. Put it in the and you're just like, oh my god,
Right.
there's all this contrivance stuff going on that you just have to admire it and just look at it. But that's where this whole thing about under or overestimation of effort is the only way you can be wrong. Well, physical universe is pretty darn slow, so you better get used to it and admire the living daylights out of it, because if you don't admire it, you're the effect of it.
Well, and I think that we've gotten, as the Theta-MEST theory goes, I think we've gotten a pretty substantial conquest of the Mest universe to the degree that we have. And yet there's more.
Mm-hmm.
And yet there's space, there's other planets, there's other energies that we ain't even discovered yet. There's other, whatever that we can't even detect with our naked eye or with our own limited perceptics. It's like there's so much more. And I think LRH says it this way. He says, as he gets ready to close out the lecture, he says, all we're interested in here is just an observable increase in the ability of life to live in this universe or escape therefrom. That's all we're after. And we find out by getting an individual to change his conclusions, his considerations, changing his mind, in other words, about the condition of affairs without liability or consequence. As far as the body, he uses the word somatics, but as far as the body are concerned and anything like that, if he can just freely change his mind from a sick man, he can become a well man. It's as simple as that.
Mm-hmm. And that's what auditing does, changes their mind.
Yeah. Changes the mind, changes the considerations, changes these agreements that you made, changes these viewpoints. And you get to a place where I now no longer have to think along that line. Boy, I will tell you, when I'm in our auditing session, when I'm getting my auditing, it is phenomenal, the stuff that I can change my mind on. The stuff that I've seen, I'm like, why did I think like that? And I'll just crack up laughing. My last session, I laughed so long.
Yeah,
it was so funny. It was so funny just to think about why I thought like that. And it was just ridiculous when you think about it. But now it's like, yeah, I don't have to agree with that thought anymore. I don't have to be that anymore. This is what auditing does for us. So I think this is fantastic. The Theta-MEST theory, please look into it. Get on a class, get on a course, go to the college and get on a course. Get into some of this stuff where you can dive into the deeper things of life. And you can start to see beyond the veil, as it were. We just talked about the parasitology stuff. See beyond the veil. of who you really are and what this is. I think this is fantastic stuff, and I hope we get to continue bringing more and more to you.
Well, I've enjoyed this podcast too. We're going to close it out here with a little reminder that you can get on course. You get auditing over the internet remotely using a theta meter, thanks to Mikhail and his wonderful device that actually responds better than a church's Mark 7 or Mark 8, shows FNs better. We can get you in session. We can get you on course. We can introduce you to the Theta-MEST theory, get you checked out on it, word clearing, you name it. We've got it. Come check out our YouTube channel, subscribe, sign up for notifications. We're going to start doing video podcasts here probably tomorrow or Monday. And that'll bring in a lot more interaction where you can ask questions live and have some interaction here instead of a one-way flow. We're really looking forward to that. So comment and share this video, these podcasts, all this good stuff that we're doing here in the next couple of weeks, really ramping up to have a lot more flow through and interaction with everybody. So we appreciate you being here. We love you, and namaste.
Peace.